All right, here we go with the second part of Contact Report 39. Billy and Semjase are getting ready to go on a trip, and I'm thinking they're talking about doing a time jump and also into an alternate dimension. We're just about to the point where Ptaah is ready to meet up with them because Semjase said her ship, she can go into an alternate dimension, but she can't get back out without the help of the Great Spacer, which Ptaah is bringing. So they're getting ready to meet up with Ptaah. They're going to jump into a different dimension, I believe, through the Bermuda Triangle. Okay. Anyway, here we go. Semjase, I just want to go down close so that I can demonstrate the transition to you, as it is also experienced by earthly pilots and crews of ships. Billy, oh, I see. Then go ahead. Semjase, you really seem to have no nerves. Consider now that with this transition, it does not concern that which normally exists. This is the transition into the dimension of the threefold world. So this is a different dimension than that one into which ships and airplanes penetrate. Billy, what type of dimension then? Does it concern with the other one? Semjase, in that dimension, the world is already suspended in the distant future, but the inhabitants on the earth of that time very rarely penetrate from that. Billy, so be it, girl, but human child, we are already in the middle of the thing, and at the same time, one cannot see anything at all that would indicate a radiation or something. Girl, this is really fantastic. Wait, yes, girl, behind us. I see my own world, and there in front is something completely foreign, something wild and quaint. Semjase, we are now at the exact crossroads of the vortex, thus you can see both dimensions. In the front of us is the primeval world as I described it to you. Billy, that is simply great. Will we now slip in completely? Semjase, we are already inside, as you see. Billy, huh? Those there ahead are now two of the worlds mentioned? Semjase, sure, as I have described them to you. Billy, fantastic, simply fantastic, girl. There ahead, yes, is Ptaah. Is he coming up again from the primeval world? Semjase, surely, otherwise he would not have landed on the planet. Did he land his great spacer on the planet? Anyway, but now we will go to him and leave my beam ship there. Billy, great. Then we can poke around a bit in the world. Did you really make a protective suit for me? Semjase, surely. And we also considered that you can move your arm in the suit in such a manner that you can use your camera. Billy, and the film camera? Semjase, that would have made the suit much too bulky. But if you want to make a film here, then for now I will still fly you around in the world with my ship. But then for the photographs, you have to use the scanning device because we cannot step out without suits. Billy, done. Then zoom off at once. I would like to capture some dinosaurs on film. Semjase, as you wish, but be sparing with the film, since you only have a little, as you said. And in parentheses, Semjase talks with her father via a communication device. Then we investigate the planet, the primeval world, for about 2 hours in her beam ship. I can take various pictures of dinosaurs and the landscape before we travel to her father in his great spacer. During the 2-hour expedition flight, nothing of importance was mentioned, so Semjase finds this short conversation not worth transmitting. Explanation from the 8th of December, 1975. And parents. Okay, parentheses. Already in the spaceship of Ptaah after the greeting. Ptaah, it is a pleasure for me to see you again. Billy, the pleasure is all mine. But how is it with this? Semjase told me that we can do some walking on this primeval world. Ptaah, that is right. We have had a suit made for you through which you can take photographs. Billy, Semjase already told me that. I would also like then a photo of you and me in the suit. Semjase, I will do that. Ptaah, you may not distribute my picture, however. Billy, that is indeed a pity, but if you want it like that, ... Ptaah, it must be, unfortunately, because I might still have to move on the earth once in your time. Billy, I understand. You do not want to be recognized. Ptaah, that is so. It is a precautionary measure. But let us go now. In parentheses, we let ourselves slide down through the transportation chute into the hangar, where we get into protective suits. In Semjase's beamship, we then glide out into the primeval world and move about it for a long time. At various places, we leave her ship, and I can capture some dinosaurs and landscapes on my slide film. Semjase partially paralyzes the large animals from her ship in order to make the filming easier for me. The animals then stand petrified. Then, as promised, she also takes a photo of Ptaah and me. After many hours, we go back into the Great Spacer. End parents. Billy, that was a fantastic excursion. Ptaah, no Earth human ever had that opportunity. Later, we will also show you the third world over there and also its moon. Now, I'm going to stick in a quick note here. This sounds really bizarre and really way out there. But you got to figure, these people are 3,500 years ahead of us technologically. How much do you think we could discover in 3,500 years? These guys have been out there and done it. So, you take it with a grain of salt. Okay, the world there is about 870 years ahead of your time. Thus, the human beings are also accordingly developed in their technology and have their own beam ships with which they arrive at your Earth every now and then. So they come to our dimension every so often. Even on their moon, they have established themselves and have built many stations. We will not visit the middle world because it is not important. There is, indeed, manifold life on it, and its oxygen content is very high, but you have already seen such world bodies during your great journey. Billy, can we not fly there immediately? Semjase, there are still various things to do which we can do here. Billy, you are, once again, quite mysterious. Ptaah, it is no secret. We are searching here for an overdue beamship of a life form known to us from our dimension. It penetrated a few days ago and has no possibilities for its own return. Billy, how will you find it? Ptaah, we have sent out several space analyzers in order to explore everything. We will know their results in 2 to 3 hours at the latest. Billy, then we have to stay here so long? Semjase, sure. Billy, very well. It certainly will not get boring. Plus, I still have many questions. He's always got many questions. Ptaah, you are untiring in that. Billy, I am just interested in everything. Semjase announced to me at one of the earlier contacts that it should soon start again with the spiritual teaching. However, the good girl has not transmitted anything to me in relation to this. But on the other hand, it seems to me that she is concealing something from me. Ptaah, my daughter really is a little mysterious sometimes concerning the spiritual teaching. She has also only given you partial information. The full fact is that the real spiritual teaching is not supposed to be transmitted by us, but rather from a very high spirit level, with which even we can only get in touch with through the High Council. Remember, their High Council is half spiritual and half physical. And that, in turn, only through Arahat Atharsada. So she's talking about a spirit level above the Arahat Atharsada, maybe the Patali. Billy, that would indeed be the level of Patali through which the 12 recommendations were given to us, right? Ptaah, that is so. In the future, Certain information for the spiritual teaching will be transmitted to you from this level, but you then have to prepare everything definitively. The 10 recommendations, or more precisely, the 12 recommendations, were the beginning of the transmissions. Since these transmissions demand exceptionally many powers from you, however, longer intervals must be kept from one transmission to another. Billy, but other human beings can, nevertheless, also perceive ongoing transmissions without being exhausted by it. Ptaah, you know very well that this is not the case, and that the majority of the so-called mediums truly have no contacts at all with such life forms, or even other dimensioned life forms, and that some of them are just subject to a self-deception or are quite consciously and deceitfully led to believe such contacts. There are only very few real contacts with higher levels, and valuable transmissions are even rarer. But Earth humans who could have actual contacts in this form with other life forms and higher spirit levels would not just be able to pursue communication according to their liking and indefinitely, because their powers would be very strongly diminished by these contacts. So these would have to be renewed for every new contact, which would often take many weeks or even several months. They would never be able to bear such power achievements as they are demanded of you, for they would surely die in complete exhaustion. You know why. Billy, of course, but your speech means that I will have to perform an enormous amount of work again, because with Ptaah, I have to write everything twice. I only receive the transmissions by hand. With the machine, it just does not work. Ptaah, I know that, and it has its reasons. But through Quetzal's technical assistance, you can indeed write very quickly with your writing utensil. I think he's talking about his typewriter. Quetzal messed with his typewriter and made it really fast somehow. Whereby you still have to omit many sentences and often also write the wrong words, etc., by which means the opposite of what is said and explained, etc., often results. Consequently, my daughter frequently has to sit down with you in order to make the necessary corrections, which you must then insert between the written lines. Unfortunately, everything is a bit complicated, so regrettably, it cannot be arranged differently. Billy, I can figure that out myself. Then I have to come to terms with the fact whether I like it or not. Another question that I still have in stock concerns something else entirely. I would gladly like to know what is with a certain Salvador Villanueva Medina, who has written a book about his contacts with extraterrestrials and his flights to other planets. I have received the book to read from Mr. K. Admittedly, I have not yet read it through completely. Ptaah, you also should not strive further for that, because all statements in this writing are freely invented. Billy, that means that the man is a fraud? Ptaah, in every sense, yes, even if he wants to serve a good purpose with it. Through various UFO reports, he has fallen to very strong fantasies, and moreover has been very strongly influenced by Adamski. And we've said several times, Adamski's a fraud. As one who wants to improve the world, which isn't such a bad thing, with a certain hatred against the earthly life forms, human life forms. It was only an inevitable consequence for him to venture to the public with dishonest assertions in his work, which, by the way, was not written by him. Okay. Billy. Oh, so that is it. But why then does he feel hatred in himself against the Earth humans? Semjase, on the one hand, because he is not able to reach any position of power due to his minimal abilities in every respect. And on the other hand, because his own appearance depresses him, and he appears disproportionate to himself. Okay. Billy, Aha. Then that would probably be the reason why he says in his book, with regard to the alleged two Frenchmen on the imaginary planet, that they were typically disproportionate and ugly Earth humans, right? Psychologically seen, I can at least find in this the reason for his description. So he must be an ugly dude. Anyway, Ptaah, you think very sharply and precisely. The reason for his statement is actually to be found in that. Billy, how could it be otherwise? But from his statement, which I find very derogatory for the Earth humans, the question arises as to what really is the case with this. By that I mean whether the Earth human is actually so disproportionate and ugly when compared to other life forms in the universe. Ptaah, the Earth human is a descendant of a human form from the depths of the universe that is very highly developed in every manner. Accordingly, she is also highly developed in his or her proportional form. In this connection, she is on an equal footing with our own race, which is already approximately 30 million years further developed. So we're sexy then, I guess. Okay. Even life forms that are still further developed have no better or more beautiful proportions, and even among them there are those whom the Earth human would describe as ugly. The proportional beauty of the Earth human was already recognized in ancient Greece, which is why the human beings surpassing this standard of beauty were called Adonis, in parentheses, good-looking ones. At that time, the Earth human was somewhat wild, so the real beauty was only recognized in a few, while those through whom it was recognized were called the beautiful ones, if I use the current Earth human terms for it. At the present time, however, since the Earth human has discarded his or her greatest wildness and consciously cares for their appearance, their given beauty comes to a validity in its entire appearance. So today, in this regard, the majority of Earth humanity can be spoken of as Adonis forms. So we're handsome. This refers to the Earth human's physiognomic, shape-related, and proportional appearance. The Earth human is one of the most well-proportioned and best-looking human life forms in the universe, who is only somewhat surpassed by his actual ancestors, who have reached the best possible perfection in proportional regard. They say beauty's in the eye of the beholder. The difference, however, is no longer very great because the material form is subject to limits and cannot be extended. Billy, then the assertion of Villanueva is rubbish, so to speak, thus a somewhat underdeveloped spiritual stink bomb. Ptaah, certainly, if you like to put it like that. Billy, so accordingly there should be no so-called supernatural beauty, etc. Ptaah, these are pronounced fantasies of uneducated Earth human life forms who want to make credible their fraudulent claims that they have made contact with extraterrestrials. In the whole universe, neither in this one nor in another, can the standards of beauty be exceeded, for it truly is limited. If this limit is exceeded, however, then a degeneration already takes place, and the life form in question must be described as ugly again, if I judge according to earthly concepts of beauty. Hence, there can also be no supernatural beauty, as you have mentioned this. Everything that is material is subject to certain limits that can never be exceeded. Only the imagination is able to exceed these limits, but without ever being able to realize it. Billy, nevertheless, Elizabeth Clarer, for example, has also stated that she encountered an extraterrestrial of supernatural beauty and even bore him a son. In addition, Adamski and various others spoke of unearthly or supernatural beauty. Ptaah. Any rationally thinking Earth human can recognize the untruthfulness of their claims because only the imagination can produce such images. They are, however, nothing more than mirages which exhibit momentary fata morgana manifestations and then fade away again for good in the very next split second. Then, Billy, then how do you classify the interpretation of Villanueva? Ptaah, it is a world improvable defamation of the earth humans that is born from hatred. Billy, so an insult to us earthworms. Ptaah, that is so. Billy, then his philanthropy really is not fetched from afar. Ptaah, it is only feigned and serves for the purpose of profit. Billy, then the case is indeed dear clear. Wait a minute. Sorry. Billy, then the case is indeed clear. There is something else, however, that you should explain for everyone for the interest of our cause, namely the connections or certain connections with the age of the earth human. I already know about these things because Svath informed me about them when I was a boy. Nevertheless, these things were never written down, so others are not oriented about them. I am referring to the fact that the thought powers of every single human being are capable of raising or lowering the life force of others. Let me get that last sentence again. I am referring to the fact that the thought powers of every single human being are capable of raising or lowering the life force of others. Ptaah, certainly, this question is of great importance, and I will give you the information about that for everyone. The age of each life form is partially determined by the external forces penetrating into them of a cosmic as well as environmental and nutritional nature, etc., as well as by forces of other similar life forms. And to be sure, the genes play the predominant role. Since the thinking of a life form through the cooperation of the spirit generates an extremely logical, thus creation-based power that is released as high-frequency swinging waves and radiations, a tremendous force is thereby generated which is capable of influencing everything. This creation-based power penetrates into everything, truly into all material life forms and all matter, in order to influence them according to their type and form. Every life form has a lifespan in accordance with its genes and its level of life, including the human life forms of the earth. At the earliest times, when the human being of the earth was also produced by his or her indirect ancestors, his or her average age was reckoned at 1,007 years of life. For she trained and informed by his or her progenitors, possessed an enormous level of knowledge and ability. So there we go again. In the earliest times, humans lived 1,000 years. Unexpectedly quickly, however, they fell to the religions with their erroneous teachings and were thereby deprived of the true knowledge and the truth. They also necessarily began to work against all natural laws, became alienated to them, and lived in a recommendation-breaking and law-breaking manner. Everything together served for the loss of the high average lifespan, which fell lower and lower over the course of thousands of years and leveled off at a 20th of its earlier time. And indeed, especially because many different factors over many thousands of years negatively affected the life and also altered the genes. A turn for the better has only been apparent since the beginning of the new era, thus the average lifespan slowly rises again. The main reason for this is found in the recognition of the truth and in the positive evolution associated with it. Thus, the more the development direction turns to the truth again, the higher the average lifespan develops again. For through this, the altered genetic factors and all other life-supporting factors are also regulated again, which were badly impaired over the course of tens of thousands of years. The mass of Earth humans moving in consciously evolving forms is still relatively very low, and is often only connected with the beginnings of the real truth. Thus, no major progress has been made yet. But the more the Earth human turns to the real truth, and with this also towards evolution in all areas, and so also in reference to life extension, the more his or her average age of life rises again. Seen as a whole, however, every single life form is of most important significance, namely in its thinking and in the powers released from it. All thoughts radiate as tremendous forces and encounter the other life forms, which draw these towards themselves like magnets. Depending on the quality and whether they are negative, positive, or well balanced, they produce powers of the same kind with corresponding effects in the life forms intercepting them. Positive powers produce positive powers, and accordingly, negative powers produce negative powers, of course. Through the erroneous teachings and other deceptions of the religions, however, the Earth human, in the main, is able to deploy many powers that destructively influence all life forms. These destructions are based on the fact that they impair one's age as a result of erroneous teachings and wrong lifestyles, etc., so the average age lowers. The larger the gatherings of human beings are, such as in cities, the lower the average age falls, because exactly at such places, immeasurable thought energies in terms of wrong lifestyles are released and unconsciously penetrate into fellow human beings. I guess there's a note here, or I got a note. They say the Pleiadians don't live in cities on their homeworld. They're spread out all over everywhere. I guess that's why. Okay, but also animals and many materials are impaired by these destructive forces of human irrationality and thus are left to an early destruction, like iron, for example, which normally never rusts as quickly as what is currently the case on Earth, and which only does so because the thought-based and idea-based produced progressions are destroying the atmosphere and environment. Excuse me. Okay, my apologies, but phone rang and a bunch of stuff going on. Anyway, okay, we're back to here. The most dangerous storehouses of wrong, humanly produced thought swinging wave powers, however, are precious metals, precious stones, and crystals, which often accumulate these energies in deadly doses. Thus, an Earth human may make herself guilty in the death of a fellow human being, whether consciously or unconsciously, when they cultivate and maintain thoughts and feelings in a negatively degenerated form and thereby releases uncontrollable destructive powers. No, I'm going to do that one again. Thus, an Earth human may make herself guilty in the death of a fellow human being, whether consciously or unconsciously, when they cultivate and maintain thoughts and feelings in a negatively degenerated form and thereby releases uncontrollable destructive powers. If the Earth human wants to think and evolve correctly and in accordance with the creation, then she may neither move his or her thought forms in Osgurtiten, negative paths, nor in Osgurtiten, positive paths, for both are degeneracies that can produce very bad and negative consequences. Thus, they are contrary to the creation. Right thinking and evolving express themselves through a well-balanced and neutral wise of thinking, and through right actions and right feelings, which then generate and send out identical forces, through which life is produced and maintained, and an evolution that is truly appropriate for creation is followed. Billy, that is very interesting. I just hope that your explanations are detailed enough because all that is still very difficult to understand for the human beings of my world. Ptaah, that is, unfortunately so, as many Earth humans still strive far too little to be able to understand certain knowledge completely. Billy, that is often due to the fact that many human beings are much too overwhelmed with everyday worries. Ptaah, that may very well be, but still that does not entitle them to neglect the values of the spirit. In the entire universe, there are no life forms that do not have to do any consciousness-related work for their existence. Rather, they devote themselves to the valuable teaching of the Spirit. Work and worries are never an excuse for disregarding the given laws and recommendations. It just concerns a lack of effort because that which is material is considered more important. Yeah, things like mortgages and food prices and gas prices and work and family and yeah, we got a few things to distract us. Billy, it is indeed like that, Ptaah, but human beings do not let themselves be convinced of that so easily. Hence, many also believe that everything has simply been placed into my lap through a benevolent foreordination, even though I had to learn a lot of things in addition to my daily work, just as every other human being must also do. Ptaah, you are very sparing with your self-praise, and your speech is far from the truth. You should not constantly demean yourself if only you would finally learn that. You speak very disparagingly of yourself and your achievements. Indeed, I am many centuries older than you, but I feel the highest esteem for you. However, I cannot approve your strong modesty because it does not correspond to your level. You are too modest, which is why you also cannot get along in your world in certain matters, and I am thinking of materialistic matters. It would be ... Billy, and now even you are starting with that. Semjase has already wiped me out with that. Ptaah, but it would really be better for you and your family if you would just strive a little for materialism, which is now demanded in your world. You and your family must have what is necessary in order to be able to eke out a living. You cannot exist without a certain materialism. He don't want to be material at all. He wants to be all spiritual, and I kind of can't blame him. Billy, excuse me, Ptaah. You are indeed a very wise man, quite apart from your age, but somehow you think wrongly, for I'm ... Ptaah, do you really want to teach me? Billy, that is exactly what I want, even though it may not suit your plans. Ptaah, you are upset. Billy, I admit that, for it ... Ptaah, your agitation is incomprehensible to me. I am nevertheless just trying to help you and to revise your false notion. In my view, you act incorrectly, and you also know that very well. In your world, you cannot live without materialistic tendencies, no matter whether these tendencies are genuine or just imposed on you. But if you ... Billy, now please, just listen to me very carefully, Ptaah. I feel a whole lot of respect and esteem for you, and not just because of your age, which does not matter one bit to me, and whether you are now a JHWH or not also has nothing to do with the matter, because for me, titles are sound and smoke and are absolutely meaningless. My respect and esteem are based on totally different things about which you can calmly believe me, and I have ... Semjase, you speak very disrespectfully with my father. Ptaah, do not interrupt him. He should express his opinion. Billy, thanks, Ptaah. I wanted to say ... And I still have not ever met a human being to whom I could offer as much respect as I do to you. This was not even the case with Svath. But still, this does not mean that even you cannot be wrong once or cannot simply say rubbish, for you presumably do not know the exact background. Well, in your view, and in the view of Semjase and all others known to me, I am a quite confounded anti-materialist. You are all absolutely right about that with certainty. That is why you all constantly pick on me and try to rid me of my anti-materialism. You all actually believe that I could, at least, simply play around with a little bit of materialism, and you do not consider the danger that can arise from that. Consider once that at that time, almost 40 years ago, Svath made hell for me because of damn materialism. He made me aware of the fact that a prophet, as you always flashily call me, can never do justice to his mission if he has fallen as much as a jot to materialism. I considered this very damn carefully at the time as a teenage boy and have therefore studied human beings thoroughly, and through this I have ultimately come to realize that if I really want to fulfill my task, then I must truly be free of the smallest jot of materialism, for otherwise I can never do justice to my task. I also recognized that only through the discarding of the last remnant of materialism would I, in turn, be able to give back property entrusted to me just as I have received it. This, in turn, resulted in the recognition that materialism also has reference to words, speeches, and thoughts. Therefore, also, words, speeches, and thoughts must be free of every little bit of materialism if one really wants to be an anti-materialist in sincerity. Hence, it is also absolutely impossible that I could simply play around with certain tendencies of materialism. Believe me, Ptaah, it was not damned easy for me to renounce materialism in the manner that I am no longer even concerned for the good of my daily bread. I needed many years for this, almost 2 decades even, but I have done it. And only once I had achieved this did I also have the confidence that the slightest form of materialistic approach could no longer throw me off course when I had to fulfill my task in the near future. This, in turn, was the assurance for me that through the removing of the last bit of materialism, I would also reflect every word said or otherwise conveyed to me very literally, as it has been entrusted to me. Through the removing of materialism, I have also become modest to an extent, and in the things in which modesty is necessary. This modesty also keeps me from changing even a single iota of a word according to my own sense or discretion when a word is transmitted or said to me. I give it all back again so verbatim as I receive it, even if, because of this, I am often called a liar. Believe me, Ptaah, it is really impossible for me even to play around with materialism because this would endanger my task. Consider that from playing around, bad and bitter consequences come damn quickly, through which the best human being with the best intentions slowly but surely falls over and one day becomes just like she has played through a certain time. There is only a single means of defense against this, namely that one does not get involved in such a game under any circumstances. That would be irresponsible and bad. But on the other hand, my anti-materialism has become a conviction in me in such a stable form that it cannot be reversed anymore, not even for a game, which also, in turn, means nothing other than to my own advantage. Even if you would offer me a huge treasure by what means I could give up my anti-materialism, such an action would not be possible for me. Ptaah, you make me think, ... I have never considered these things in this way. It seems to me that injustice has been done to you. It is strange, but I feel aching emotions in me for you. It is very strange, dear friend. Somehow it seems to me more and more often that you stand above me in many things. ... Semjase, It is very painful to me. Billy, leave this nonsense. Sentimentality is really out of place. Everyone, including you, wanted an earthworm who consciously fulfills a certain task to everyone's satisfaction. Well, I have been revamped and patched up for this, and perhaps I have also added a little more myself than I had assumed so. That might be right, good, but with that, the matter is really done. Ptaah, that is not quite so, for these things were not considered by us. I am very sorry I was wrong with my comments, but it is an even greater joy for me that I was allowed to receive this instruction from you. Semjase, I am very sorry. My words earlier, which I ... Billy, nevertheless, leave this nonsense. We are not in a sentimentality theater. Ptaah, you violate your feelings. Billy, you still have to speak of feelings. You yourselves have always said that one must have these under control. And who has that now, eh? I, for one, cannot complain about that. Semjase, you are very harsh. Ptaah, that is actually so. Billy, one has taught me this. Ptaah, you have learned this yourself because your school was inhumane. Billy, that is nonsense. I am, in fact, still alive. Ptaah, I really know this better than you because you only look at these issues from your perspective, and this is fundamentally different from the outermost acceptable standard of the Earth humans. I have, however, thought to myself about your explanations and have recognized that you think and act correctly. You bear a very great responsibility with regard to your task, which you truly are only able to fulfill if you move in your anti-materialism and in your relevant modesty. But this only became clear to me just now when you spoke in your agitation. My own comments were very inconsiderate. Still, you should not have to live in want. No work on the earth is currently as worthy of its wages as yours. Therefore, the earth humans should give you your wage and feed you and your family and give you what is necessary. Billy, I cannot demand that. Ptaah, you know that. It just does not work. Ptaah, I have not finished my explanation yet. I did not speak of the fact that you should do this. It should be a voluntary rendering of all those human beings who respect your work and find it worthy of its wages. Billy, you make me laugh. You speak a very swollen language of open begging, but I am not a beggar, Ptaah. Ptaah, your speech is illogical because voluntary rendering always occurs in sincerity for something good. Billy, still, it is a form of begging, except that it is just indirect. But I will not beg, damn it, and in the fulfillment of my task, I do not work to get rich. That's probably why all his materials are basically free. Everything that he says, his contact reports are free. He don't want to get rich. He just wants to pass this stuff on. Ptaah, you and your family have to be able to live, yet you do not beg indirectly, and you do not even let yourself be paid for your work. Billy, it is, nevertheless, like that. Ptaah, you speak illogically. Semjase, I see no hope, Father. For this reason I have already told him that he should let certain matters be administered by a friend, such as the sale of writings or books transmitted to him. But he said that he would become a baby through this. It is, however, my wish that he entrust these matters to a friend, for otherwise he places the writings and books in sales and marketing without even receiving any thanks or wages for all his work. Ptaah, that would not be right. Your idea is very good. Billy, I can still do what I want. Ptaah, you may not do that because that which is voluntarily given to you is given in sincerity and serves for you and your family to live. Hence, do not use gifts given to you for others' assistance again. Others need assistance less than you. You will often only be exploited. Isn't that true? Billy, I just have to be ready for that. Ptaah. But you and your family live in want because of that. Now listen to what I have to tell you. The wish of my daughter is justified and good. Therefore, entrust a friend with the administration of those matters that secure your existence for you. You have to perform the most difficult task. Therefore, you should pass on writings and books, etc., with appropriate remuneration. This is not a form of greed or any other materialism, and when you receive gifts, this does not mean the acceptance of a beggar's good. It is only the right that is entitled to you in your world, as well as every other life form of your world, each of which performs a job in order to be remunerated, and fed for it. Consider the old prophets who were long before your time. They were not as anti-materialistically pronounced as you, but they were also dependent on renderings for their work, which they had to accept in order to be able to live and exist. Think also of the birds of the sky. They too work and are remunerated for it. Their instinct directs them to hunt for vermin, which they catch and destroy, in order to protect plant life and other life forms from these. But they are recompensated for this with the fact that they, through the extermination of the vermin, are provided with everything that satisfies their hunger, that gives them strength, and that lets their plumage appear in magnificent splendor. Billy, one could think you are an ornithologist or a romantic. Ptaah, neither is true, but with your comment, you just want to put a different twist on the topic. It is very unpopular to you. After everything that I now know, I hold your anti-materialism in honor, and I consider myself lucky to know that which is anchored in you. But you must be helped. So, therefore, it is also my wish that a good friend of yours with good knowledge takes care of the mentioned concerns. Billy, that really will not work, Ptaah. It just will not work. Ptaah, you make me seriously agitated. Now listen very carefully to my question. Do you want to endanger our and your very important mission, or even question it? Billy, certainly not, Ptaah. Ptaah, then you still have the necessary means to live. Still got to eat. Still got to have a place to live. Billy, well, it still goes. Ptaah, you avoided my question. Do you still have the necessary means to live? Your answer should be yes or no. Billy, I said, nevertheless, ... Ptaah, your answer. Billy, no, all right. I am bankrupt and cannot even pay my bills for the month of December. Ptaah, and the celebration where you celebrate Emmanuel's honor? Billy, you know, nevertheless, that this is only a pseudo-celebration. Ptaah, you did not answer my question. Boy, they're grilling him. Billy, well then, we make a small Christmas tree for the children. He does that on Emmanuel's birthday, which is February 22nd, I think. I forget the exact date. Ptaah, and further? Billy, what further? Somehow I will soon scrape together something so that I can also buy them a gift. Ptaah, that is how the situation is. Your deprivation of your family should not happen, and it will no longer occur in this form in about a year from now. Therefore, I will concern myself about this. Henceforth, I will monitor your steps relating to this. Because of this, I now have to suggest the following to you. You said earlier that you want to fulfill your mission. That is very good. You can only fulfill it, however, if you accept assistance that has been offered to you. I impose on you as an obligation that you place the mentioned concerns into the care of a trustworthy friend. Thus, he regulates the necessary matters for you, and you have the essentials to support you and your family. I also impose on you as an obligation to accept gifts given to you in love and sincerity as your property. Should you not satisfy this obligation, then I would have to suspend all transmissions to you and all contacts for the duration of the time that you need to reflect. Finally, I would like to say that from now on, you should accept the free thank you donations of those human beings whom you help and advise, and should use these for living costs, etc., for you and your family. These include those donations of those human beings whom you release from physical and psychological suffering. Billy, you are quite radical. Ptaah, you force me to it, for I cannot and may not allow it that you and your family live in want in your current materialistic world and that you are destroyed. Billy, do you really mean that seriously? Ptaah, my words correspond to my sense. Billy, then I will simply comply with your task and ask someone if he wants to mess with the things mentioned. You do, indeed, force me to it. But believe me, I still will not discard my anti-materialism, not even if you spit fire and brimstone. Ptaah, the talk also was not about that. You should remain as you are. It is just that a good friend should administer your concerns mentioned. Billy, good. Then I just stay on track. You cannot forbid me, however, that I only pass this contact report on to all friends and acquaintances once these pesky holidays are over. Ptaah, Semjase will already transmit it to you before that time. Billy, but I will quite simply have no time to print it, and I can only pass it on once I have printed it. Ptaah, so you want to postpone this work for certain reasons? Billy, exactly. Ptaah, I cannot keep you from that, which I also do not want to do because I understand you and your concerns very well. Billy, now that is a load off my shoulders. Ptaah, I exercise no compulsion on you in this matter, but where it is necessary for the purpose of you and your family's well-being, I will intervene. Billy, topic ended? Ptaah, that should suffice. Billy, okay then. I have another question regarding Mount Shasta. I have already talked about this with Semjase, but something still seems unclear to me. Semjase told me that distant descendants of the Hyperboreans now live in Mount Shasta on the Aleutian Islands and in Alaska. Enoch, however, and also Emmanuel spoke of the winds between the east and west, or between the north and the west. From this, I always thought that the Greenland of the Hyperboreans, so Hyperborea, must have been somewhere far up north in Greenland or something. But now this does not make sense anymore with Mount Shasta. What should I now think of this? Ptaah, at the time of Enoch, the North Pole was situated differently than what is the case today. Through cosmic influences and through an upset of the Earth, the North Pole at that time shifted far to the west. The central point of the North Pole at that time is identical to the present-day Florida in America. The polar regions at the time of Enoch were wondrous landscapes filled with palms and other tropical vegetation. You would say that it was paradise on earth, for it had the most favorable climate of your world. Golden apples flourished and ripened there. These are simply called oranges today. In the timelessly young nature of Hyperborea, an uninterrupted summer prevailed, and it was also called the land of timeless youth. The most delicious fruits thrive there like nowhere else on the earth. The average annual temperature in the land of Hyperborea was 26.7 degrees of your measuring values. I guess that's Celsius. And the coldest season never sank below the value of 21.9 degrees of your current values. Similar conditions can still be found today in the former Hyperborea, so in Florida. I hear it's been snowing in Florida lately. Anyway, Billy, that is fantastic, but can you tell me exactly where at the North Pole this Hyperborea lay? Ptaah, it lay exactly where the land is still called Greenland today, whereby the actual North Pole of that time is not identical with today's North Pole. Billy, so Greenland, because as far as I know, this is called Grunland in German. Ptaah, that is so. Tur lay there. I don't get that. Nog lay there. Billy, what is that? Ptaah, Greenland and land of youth. But at that time, it was today's Florida. Billy, so then Heracles, Gilgamesh, Enoch, Emmanuel, Amitabha, Methuselah, and Noah, and all others were up there and not in Florida? Ptaah, in Hyperborea, in Florida, when it was still at the spot where today the land still means grassland. But Emmanuel was not there because he was already in Florida, where it is to be found today. Billy, of course, he did not live until much later. But in connection with the Hyperboreans, I still come to another question, namely about the legendary Agharta. Are you also oriented about this, and can you give me more details about it? Ptaah, you surprise me again and again. How is the right name familiar to you? To my knowledge, the humanity of Earth still lives in error regarding the name of Agharta. In general, it is still erroneously called Agharti. Billy, you forgot that I was in India and in the Himalayas for a long time, and I also encountered the blue human beings. Okay. Ptaah, that is why. I should know that. Unfortunately, I cannot give you exhaustive information in an open forum because certain things still have to remain confidential, like the blue people. However, that was my comment. I'm sorry. However, this much may be said that in the vicinity of Semjase and Ptaah is the underground realm of Agharta, the capital and center of distant descendants of extraterrestrials on the Earth. This is the center of the actual secrets that hold a gigantic power in themselves. This city is controlled by the race of the sons of the sun. But unfortunately, a tendency toward earthly world domination also prevails with this race, just like with certain earthly religions and secret societies. I may not explain anything else about it openly. In parentheses, just as Ptaah speaks his last words, an android approaches and says something in a language that is incomprehensible to me and parents. Ptaah, the missing beam ship has already been found, so we can now continue the journey. Our next goal shall be the moon of the third world. With Semjase, you can visit it and also photograph it if you want to do that. After that, move on to that world which she wants to let you see. In parentheses, with Ptaah's great spacer, we glide out into space, while Semjase and I let ourselves fall into the transportation chute and in the hangar go to her ship. Soon we glide out of the airlock and into free space and rush on to the moon of the third world. A conversation does not come about for the time of being, and so I devote myself entirely to the events on the moon, where the human beings of the future have already built their stations and live there. Semjase only gives me reference notes on various activities and buildings on the moon, which I then write down as references in order to have later descriptions for the pictures made by me. The flights in all directions over the moon last for several hours, and then Semjase brings her ship back into free space, where I make 2 specific observations and parents. Billy. Semjase, where is Ptaah? I cannot see his spacer. Semjase, it is in the protection of his radiation screens. Billy, you mean protected from view? Semjase, surely, because we are foreigners here. That is why I also had to put the protective screen into effect around my beamship. The human beings of this dimension and time have indeed become much more peaceful than those on your world in your time, but they are still barbaric and quite aggressive, so they would force us to land, which would be very unpleasant for us. Billy, aha. So they actually are still like the Earth humans, but then they are still like the Earth humans, but then they still rush around with their primitive rockets? Semjase, what are you thinking? They are living here almost 500 years in the future. Look over there. That is one of their beam ships. Billy, beam ships? Girl, then these elves already master space travel? Semjase, sure, they also have about 500 years more development behind themselves than the Earth humans of your time, which I already said. Billy, of course, yes, but I am going crazy. Look there, ... And there's a couple of pictures of these beam ships here in this report. Semjase, I do not understand you ... Billy, but still, look, the beam ships that they have, I know those from somewhere. I have seen those before. Wait. Ah, yes. They look remarkably similar to the fantasy products of spaceships, which I recently saw on television. It was the broadcast of a futuristic story by the name of Orion. The ship over there looks deceptively like that thing on TV. Now I do think that I am dreaming. Semjase, that is, however, not the case. Consider what I already explained to you once before, namely that certain Earth humans receive data and information from external telepathic impulses and unconsciously, so also authors and such people. Thus, they describe things and possibilities of the future and also make drawings and models. Through this, they slowly prepare the Earth humans, and in particular, the scientists, for the coming events, cognitions, and forms, and give them the drive for development. Hence, if you now see the beam ship out there, which corresponds to the form known to you, then for this you can also find the reason for it in my explanation. Billy, I understand. I did not think of that. Semjase, it is really only because of that. But now, let us fly to this world. In parentheses, a few minutes later, we are already on the planet, only in another dimension, and about 500 years in the future. Semjase shows me a lot of very interesting things, which I write down again as keywords, in order to be able to later identify the photos taken. Even the conversation itself is limited to keywords. When we fly out again into space, I notice by my watch that we were in this world for 7 hours. Far out in space, we come to Ptaah's giant ship, go in, and then Ptaah leads his ship back into my time and into my dimension. There I remember something, and thus direct a wish to Ptaah. Billy, would it be possible that you could bring me to Venus, since I want to take some photos there? Also, I would like to take somewhat better shots of our moon once, and also of Saturn and Jupiter. With Jupiter, I am especially interested in the red spot, of which I would like to make a close-up. Ptaah, I can comply with your wish. If you want to take pictures on Venus, however, then you need a light source with your camera. I have various specialized small beam ships with strong light sources. I will let 2 of these flying apparatus fly with you so you can take pictures through their light. I can also comply with the wish regarding the moon as well as Saturn and Jupiter. Concerning the close-ups of Jupiter, however, you should try hard to guard these pictures very carefully because Earth scientists could possibly gain insights from these, which would not be good for them yet. Also, regarding the pictures of me, I must ask you not to spread these and to show these exclusively in your group. You should not make any photos of these and should let the matter rest exclusively with slides, which should remain in your own possession. Originally, this was not planned in such a manner, but there is now the possibility that, on occasion, I will have to walk on the earth, protected by a vibration device. Thus, someone could recognize me, which may not be allowed, however. So he's got to wear a device to protect him from our in the mud swinging waves. And protected by a vibration device. Yeah. It was already a major exception that you were allowed to take photos of Ascot and Neera. And by the way, in the meantime, we have found female Earth humans in America who look deceptively similar to them and who, interestingly enough, also work together in a community of interests. Billy, boy, that is a shame. But the women, the doubles of Ascot and Neera, where are they? Ptaah, in the country of America. I did, however, say that already. Billy, can you give me their addresses and mention further details about them? Ptaah, I would not like to do that for certain reasons. Billy, you are always so mysterious. Ptaah, in certain matters I have to be. Parentheses. Ptaah cannot be softened, and he very quickly brings his ship to Venus, where I can, in fact, take a few pictures on the planet on its night side, using the light from 2 of his special ships. Back at the moon, I can also take several pictures, and I also fly around with Semjase in her ship. Also, with the film camera, I take various pictures, and also of an Earth satellite. When we then fly back to the moon again, I ask Semjase about the Russian lunar rover, which roved around on the moon years before. She explains that it is possible for her to set the lunar rover in motion, which I naturally wanted to do right away. Thus, she flies to the vehicle and does, in fact, set it in motion through procedures that are inexplicable to me. Of course, I also capture this on film. Then she goes back up into space. And there I see a UFO flying over the moon again, which I had already noticed during an earlier flight and which was christened Sewing Machine by Hans Jacob. Of course, I filmed this too. When we then fly to Jupiter in Ptaah's ship, I still quickly film the Earth and the moon from far away. At Jupiter, I transfer to Semjase's ship again. Then I take 3 pictures in large format of the red spot, while far in the background, Ptaah's ship hangs in space, which I also capture on film. After that, Ptaah flies into the further vicinity of Saturn, where I can also take a few more pictures. Then his time is up and he has to say goodbye. In Semjase's beam ship, we fly back to Earth, and she brings me home immediately, and I am astonished at her impertinence. End parentheses. Billy, have you gone crazy? Semjase, I have just checked everything in the area, and nothing is moving. Billy, but we are hovering right over my house. Semjase, even so, any observers would not be able to see us. My ship is shielded. Billy, that calms me, but you are still daring. Semjase, you should not be surprised about that. I have acquired this from your nature, and I think that it fits well. Billy, you really have a sense of humor. Semjase, I have also said that about you before, but now you have to go, for in a few minutes your wife will awaken. See, I am landing there, right next to the house. It is a good place. Till we meet again. Billy, okay, then just go down. Well, okay, that is handy. Till we meet again, Semjase. I think she's a little angry from that conversation earlier. Just my thoughts. Parentheses. I let myself slide through the hatch, and suddenly I do not see the beam ship anymore. I raise my hand upward, and sure enough, my hand just disappears. But I sense that it meets with metal. Thus, the ship is there, even though I cannot see it anymore. So I leave, and as I am standing only a few meters away on the street, I feel a slight pull. I quickly go back with an outstretched arm, but I cannot feel anything. There, Semjase's voice penetrates into me. End parents. Semjase, I am already very high above you. Just look. In parentheses, I look up into the sky. There, a large light, which is now quickly becoming smaller, moves very quickly and vertically into the sky and soon disappears. End parentheses. Billy, I still saw the light. Semjase, sure, but go now, for in 7 minutes your wife will awaken. Goodbye, dear friend. Billy, all the best, Semjase, and many thanks. Okay, that is the end of Contact Report 39, the second part. This was another fairly long one because he was taking a trip into different dimensions and whatever. I'm gleaming all kinds of stuff from these last couple contact reports, and my brain is kind of fried. I'll keep going. We're going to keep trucking. And thanks for watching if you're still here, and I'll get back to you on Contact Report 40. Thanks. See you. Bye.